I remember the day I got my shiny new PlayStation 3. I unboxed it, I plugged it in, I installed the mandatory 5 hours worth of updates, and I turned to my stack of unfinished PS2 games and said, "Hey, don't worry guys, I'll be back. I'm just going to play a few rounds of MotorStorm and this god-awful Gundam game, and then I'll be back. Then I will give you the time and attention you deserve. I will finish you. You will not be abandoned." I forgot. And I'm determined it's not going to happen this time. There are 5 games, 5 big games this gen that I love that I haven't finished yet. The way I see it, I got 7 months to do that, because as soon as that PlayStation 4 arrives, as soon as I've installed the updates, as soon as I've plugged it in, as soon as I've got some terrible Gundam game I imported to play on it, that's it. The 7th gen's over. I'm not going back. I know it because A, I'm lazy, and B, it's exactly what happened last time. And the time before that. So, here they are. The top 5 games I simply must finish this generation. Nothing's depressed me more this gen than the gradual fetishization and dumbing down of JRPGs. So it gave me some level of comfort that at least we had this wonderful ray of light towards the end in the form of No KUNI, a team-up between game developer Level 5 and popular anime studio Ghibli. Now, I've never been much of a Ghibli fan myself, but even I found myself moved by the wonderfully realised world of No KUNI and the touching story of one troubled boy's travels through it. But unfortunately, No KUNI is a very traditional RPG, which on one hand meant there were some cool elements to it. On the other hand, it meant everything took forever. So I put No KUNI aside so I could go finish like 12 other games in the time it would have taken me to finish the bloody tutorial in No KUNI. But it still left its mark on me, and that's made me determined to go back and see it through to the end, because I know the emotional payoff will be worth it. What of course won't be worth it is spending hours and hours watching numbers go up by almost inconsequential amounts so I can somehow advance the story. Not looking forward to that bit. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit here with this one. Technically, Yakuza 3 and 4, 2 separate games, but they're so similar you might as well consider them one big long game. I know, I certainly am. And I'll be honest, don't really want to play them as such. Kind of fed up with the gameplay at this point. You know, it's fun throwing a bicycle at a street thug the first time, the 3rd time, the 4th time, the 5th time, and so on, but at this point it's just kind of boring. But that's alright, because in Yakuza the gameplay is just a reason to give you a nice little breather in between the gigantic bouts of exposition. And it's in those moments that these games really shine. They tell this utterly fascinating story of criminal intrigue and betrayal that approaches Metal Gear in level of complexity and sheer number of characters. And it's the only game I know of that tries to tell this kind of story that's set in the real world and not some mystical fantasy universe that I can't relate with. It's why I love it, it's why I treasure it, and it's why it's so hard to go back. I have no idea what's going on in either of these games anymore, and there's just not enough time for me to go back to the beginning. I'm going to have to make the plunge at some point. Probably after reading a gigantic story FAQ. Or 3. So if you want to be pedantic about it, I've kind of already finished Fez. I jumped on some platforms, I picked up some cubes, I watched the credits roll. But that's not what Fez is about. Fez is about what lies beneath the surface. It's about hidden languages and obtuse mechanics and mind-bending puzzles and the mysterious anti-cubes that serve as your reward for discovering solutions. And I won't consider Fez complete until I have all those cubes. But I don't want to just complete Fez. I want to complete Fez without cheating. I don't want to look up any solutions. That's because my time with Fez has been really unique. It's the only game I can think of that's ever really asked me to figure stuff out, to make me think outside the box, to make me make notes, to make screenshots for future reference. It's been wonderful, and I don't want to cheat myself of what little content still remains in the game for me to figure out. But then again, it also means it's the game on this list I'm least likely to finish, because I quite frankly don't know if I'm smart enough to get it all right. But hey, I look forward to trying. As someone who's not very good at games, I'm usually the first person to complain when something's a little too hard, but even I found the brutal difficulty and overall opaqueness of Demon's Souls very compelling, and there's not really much else like it other than its sequel, Dark Souls. Only Dark Souls isn't as good, the options are more limited, some of the new mechanics are very annoying, and most importantly of all, it runs like total garbage on the PC. But then again, I've already done all there is to do in Demon's Souls, and Dark Souls is all that's left. And I suppose it's not so bad. I mean, it still scratches that same itch, and it's an itch I desperately want scratched. I want to discover things, I want to be surprised by an enemy jumping out from round a corner, I want to fail, I want to learn from those failures, and I want to overcome insurmountable odds. It's just so invigorating. It's just also a shame that it has to happen at 12 frames a second, in a game about precision where a single mistake can result in you losing hours of progress. It's kind of annoying. While No KUNI was a nice reminder that the JRPG didn't always suck, it's still got nothing on XENOBLADE. And that's because XENOBLADE, unlike every other JRPG we've had this generation, actually feels modern. It feels like it wasn't made in this weird Japanese game design bubble that's still stuck in the early 90s. It had mechanics that made sense, it had a huge open world to explore, it had combat with actual depth, and it wasn't a slave to the absolutely atrocious traditions of the genre. And even with that aside, it had the one thing these games so desperately need but ever so rarely have: good storytelling. XENOBLADE's world is this wonderful, unique and diverse place with its own history and nice little nuances that mostly steers clear of ridiculous cliches. And even on top of that, we've got actually believable characters that I couldn't help but gain an emotional attachment to. It bums me out that that's now the exception rather than the standard, but that's also why I love XENOBLADE so much. It feels like it was part of the future we were promised coming out of the PS2 era when JRPG was still the genre. And sadly it didn't materialise. But at least we have XENOBLADE, at least we have a slight little vision of what that future could have been like if things had gone a little better. But if XENOBLADE's so good, why haven't I finished it yet? Well, it's the same reason most people haven't even heard of XENOBLADE. Because it's on the Wii. And I mean, how am I supposed to justify keeping that thing plugged in now? Even if its heyday, it had hardly any decent games, and now there's practically nothing. But it's alright, because I just picked up a Wii U, and it's £200 I ain't getting back. At least I can play XENOBLADE on it. Silver linings.